Hi, my name is Vance Powell. I'm here at Nashville, Tennessee, Sputnik Sound, and I'm here with you for PSP Master Tales. Can I curse on this? Because I'm doing it. Sorry for the noshing. I have to eat it. I have to eat something at very specific intervals. So, because I'm old and fat.
With your impressive wall of equipment, I've been wondering.
Thanks for noticing.
Yeah, well, I've been wondering, do you like to record everything as wet as possible, or do you choose to...
When you say wet, what do you mean by wet?
You know, just going through all the equipment, or you try to do the processing after recording while you are mixing?
I think anybody who tries to record everything perfectly pristine with just the mic and just plug it and then try to process it afterwards is a pussy. That's bullshit. There's no fucking reason to do that. What we should be doing is every single thing that we do going to tape should be what is in the mix, because that way our vision makes it to the mix. Does that sometimes mean you fuck things up? Can I curse on this? Because I'm doing it. Does that mean sometimes you fuck things up and you get it wrong? Yes, but never have I ever thought I got something wrong so badly that I had to throw away a take or throw away a track. You know, it's you know, if you're doing this and you've been doing it for a while, you know, even the things that I think I screw up, other people go, wow, that was so awesome, because, you know, I mean, it's once it's on the record, as Miles Davis said, once it's on the record, it's perfect. You know, the reality is that I can tell you 1,000 things that I recorded wrong, or I used too much compression or too little compression, or I over EQ'd it to tape, or whatever, that nobody knows about except for me.
So you kind of think from the perspective of the end listener of like, you know, no one cares if I did this technically wrong or approach this in a weird way.
Anytime anybody says to me, well, when we recorded this, I recorded it straight off the floor. I went into the microphone, I put that on a track, and I left it for you to do what you want to do. That's the laziest bunch of bullshit ever. Should never do that. Because in the past, back classic records that we all love, people didn't do that. They couldn't, because they had multi-track recording. You know, they had 24 track or 16 track or 8 track, or the Beatles had 4 track. You know, Beatles couldn't do that. Yeah, they had 1 track of drums. It wasn't 1 mic. This 1 mic, 1 track thing is just a function of Pro Tools and Nuendo and all these DAWs and the ability for us to record 50 tracks at once. But what that does is that puts all of the creative part of it off into space, into some sort of random generator. Because if you have, let's put it this way, if someone sends me a track and there's 6 track of drums, which is what I usually record, 6 tracks, kick, snare, toms, overhead, right? So if I have, sorry about that, it was get that out of the way, I couldn't see it. If I have 6 tracks of drums, kick, snare, rack, floor, or toms in stereo, which I do often if there's more than just 2 toms, and then overheads, if I send that to you, you're pretty much going to be able to get the mix that I want out of those 6 tracks. But if I send you the 25 microphones that it takes to do that, now it doesn't ever take that many, but let's just say I did. Let's say I did a kick front, a kick in, I did a kick room, I did a snare top and bottom, I did rack, I did a rack high, rack low, rack top, rack bottom, floor top, floor bottom, overhead left, overhead right, overhead mono, hi-hat. You see where I'm going? And I send you all those tracks, and I just don't process them or do anything. I just send them to you. That is totally, it's going to be so far off what I want, what you come up with. And while some people think that's a good idea, I think it's a terrible idea. I think as a producer or engineer, if I send something to mix, I want it to sound like what I recorded, just better. not some total other idea. You know,
so you try to get things sounding sort of mixy early on by just getting the sound and then committing that to the recording.
I have a mantra I go by, and that is all my faders in Pro Tools are at 0 and all my faders on my console at 0. And I hit play, and that's the rough mix. And that's how, to be honest with you, that's basically how I've been working for years and years. And if I was to go back in my archives and open up a track I did in 2017 and put it on my console, I could put the faders at 0 and minus the pans maybe being different, hit play, and it would match up to the rough mix. So
that's interesting. I think that's how a lot of sample-based producers and like the electronic side work nowadays. Is it's all about having the sounds and everything right from the get-go, and that puts a lot less stress on you as the mix engineer. Yeah,
that's how it used to be, because you had a reel of tape, and that reel of tape, you put the tape on, and when you hit play, you didn't have all kinds of knobs and things you could turn on the machine. I mean, you did, but you didn't want to, let's put it that way, to make it sound good. And I mean, I get sessions to mix nowadays where like there's a tambourine track that's full scale, 96K, 24-bit, full scale tambourine every time. I've got it down at like -70 to put it in the mix. And it's like, it's so stupid. Just put the fader at 0, turn the mic pre up until you can hear the tambourine. That's how you record it. It's not rocket science. It's the same thing for everything else.
So it's kind of that just garbage in, garbage out philosophy of let's get it right at the source.
Stupid. It's just stupid. Yeah, people just turn that thing up, turn the faders up and down, and get a mix in Pro Tools that totally is bullshit. It's a bullshit way of working. And but there are people who tell me that everything I'm saying, I'm sure there are people who believe that everything I'm saying is wrong until they do it, right? Until they do it. And then once they do it, they go, oh, wow, he was right. That makes a lot more sense. So
instead of they're fiddling with it for hours, you just have it, ready. Yeah.
I mean, technology here, if you guys were here in the room, I could literally prove it to you. I could prove it. I can put the money where my mouth is, because that's how I work. I don't move these faders around a lot. I mean, when I'm tracking, the faders are all at 0. I just change pans, And
has that always kind of been your approach, or did you kind of develop that over time of like getting frustrated with it?
You just have to think. I came from working with tape. I'm old. I mean, that's how tape worked. You put the faders up, and you kind of put the faders at 0. You turn the mic pre up. You made sure you had a proper amount to tape because you had to deal with noise. You didn't have the ability to record 20 tracks of drums and rooms on the tape because you had a 24-track tape machine. So you couldn't do that. So you had to kind of put things together and consolidate them, and you had to make a sound. Here's the sound of this record. It's these 4 tracks of drums. There's a 1 room mic. There's a bass track, or maybe 2. There's 2 or 3, 4 guitar tracks and overdubs, and then there's vocals, and that's it. 24 tracks, boom, that's the whole record. So you had to be smart. You had to do things smart. Sometimes you had to bounce stuff. I spent 8.5 years working with Jack White on an 8-track recording. 1 track of drums, 1 track of bass, 1 track of piano, 1 track of electric guitar, 1 vocal track, right? Then you got 3 tracks here for like an overdub or a harmony vocal, a solo, and maybe some percussion. 8 tracks. Sorry, stupid. 8 tracks. 8. And you gotta remember, if you're on tape and you've got to combine some tracks together to make space, you can't bounce next to yourself. So tracks 1 and 8 were always left over. Those were the guard bands. So sometimes he would be like, hey, I think we need to put the drums and bass together because I want to do this. I'm like, okay, cool. So now I'd take the drum track and the bass track that are on 2 and 3 and copy them to 8. And so now 2 and 3 are available to record vocals over, Okay, cool. I want to copy my vocal. I want to bounce. I want to sing along to my lead vocal and do a harmony. Okay, cool. So we do track 5 to track 3. Okay, cool. Now I want to do that again. Okay, so now track 3, which has the harmony and the lead vocal, back over the lead vocal track, but only where he wants it to be. So it became this patchwork of figuring out what tracks went where.
That's interesting, and I think that's something maybe a lot of producers nowadays take for granted, is the ability, like you said, to just have unlimited tracks in Pro Tools. And I think that's a very efficient way to work, because the way you describe it is there's a constant forward momentum, and I think that's something people get bogged down in a lot now. Is we want to add more and layer and whatever, so we sit there just stacking rather than making actual linear progress where you're just kind of going and committing.
Part of what I hear in records today is the lack of space. So because we have all these tracks, we're going to use them. And, my motto is just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you can tune a vocal doesn't mean you should. Just because you can, maybe you should sing it again. Just because you have a track or 50 doesn't mean you should do guitar overdubs on every single hole in every single space, or whatever. I mean, it used to be you couldn't do that. Just because you can record 6 tracks of one track, 6 tracks of guitars, all different microphones and room mics and back mics and front mics and 2 different mics and a mic sideways and all that, doesn't mean you should. Just means really I get mixes like that all the time. 6 tracks of guitars, 1 track, 1 performance, 6 tracks. So there'll be like a 57 and then a Royer, and then there'll be like I've seen this, an SM7 in the back, okay? Oftentimes, it's not in phase because people didn't flip the phase switch, but that's a whole nother issue. A guitar room mic, a guitar room far mic. You know what I do? I turn all those off and I go, what's a 57 sound like? That's pretty good. What does that 87 sound like? Oh, it's pretty good. Let me see if I can put those 2 together. Great, perfect. Throw the rest away.
Do you typically comp your vocals as well then to kind of like cut together the performance, or do you try and use solid, stable performances the whole way through?
It depends on the artist. Like with Stapleton, he plays and sings everything. So he wants to get the whole performance. But there may be a line he doesn't like. We'll do a song 5 or 6 times and I'll just cut that whole piece. I mean, I'll do the band like a tape edit. I'll cut a whole bar into the track, instead of trying to manipulate just his track, because we're cutting everything live. So it's live mics, live guitars, live, so it doesn't work. So we'll just cut the bar end around it. It's old school tape style editing. But most of the time, if I have an artist I'm working with, like a couple years back, I did this Clutch record, right? And with Neil, we just did 5 takes. And on the 5th take, I said, all right, make this the wildest take ever. And sometimes there's cool stuff in there. We just listen through every line and try to piece together something that sounded like he sang it at one time.
Do you tune vocals sometimes? Do you use a Melodyne or Auto-Tune?
Sure. I don't use Auto-Tune. I use the Melodyne. What I do is I will tune vocals if they absolutely positively have to. Let me rephrase. One more time. I will tune a vocal if it saves the performance. If it's a great performance and there's a note that's a little sharp or flat, sure, I'll fix it. Because I have the tools to do it as well. But I don't go through and tune every single vocal or whatever. No way.
So you use it kind of as like a spot correction tool rather than just a hardcore, everything must be perfect all the time.
Yeah, no, fuck that. I hate that shit. And there's artists. I mean, I've never tuned Jack. I've never, ever tuned Chris Stapleton. No need. He knows it. If he sings something sharp or flat, he's like, no, not using that. Don't use that. Let's find a better take. That's real artists.
And do you use any drum replacement, or do you use only recorded drum?
If I'm mixing, sure, if it needs it. Why not?
Do you replace whole drum or do you
No.
mix?
Augment.
You know.
Augment. And I only use my samples. So you know what I mean? It's like I'm not using a library. I only use things I've recorded. Except for this one Bob Clearmountain sample that I will use because I idolize Bob Clearmountain.
So you've got just an archive of like replacement things for drums and such.
I have a folder in my Dropbox called Sounds I Use, and that's it.
Very typical question for every mixer. So when you feel the mix is done, it's over, like you have to go forward.
Yeah, how do I do that? What I do is I will get to a point where I don't have any more issues with it. Like I will listen and I'll be like, or I can hear everything. I like the way it sounds. Then what I do usually is I just hit play and I get over here and I get on Twitter and I go through Twitter while listening quietly, but I distract myself. And that's where I pick out things that I missed. Vocals that aren't quite loud enough, things like that. I do that a couple times and then I just send it to the band, send it to the artist or whoever. And then, you know, whatever they want to do, they're going to want to do anyway. So let's go from there.
So you don't try and obsess over the minutia of it. You just kind of give it a background listen and say, like, if you could pick out something major, then you tweak it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have, you know, every time I play it, I'm iterating different things I'm fixing or working out, you know. You know, the first hour or so of a mix is getting the balance. Once you're going to get the balance, now it's the mix. You know, the things have to move and things that go up and go down. The guitars come up in the chorus, come down the verse, you know, whatever. Snare drums louder in the verse or chorus or whatever, you know, fills, you know, all that stuff, all that little stuff. Then at some point you just play and you're like, okay, now I'm just, you know, what I'm just picking apart little pieces of it. And then at some point I go, okay, cool. I don't got anything else, you know, like, and if the band's here, I'm like, what are you guys saying? Do you hear anything? They're like, no. Like, all right, cool, done. And then they decide they want to recall it and, you know, fix the hi-hat or some stupid shit.
Another question is, how do you work with the mastering guy? Do you talk with the mastering guy?
Well, I've been using Pete Lyman, who's a good friend of mine, a lot lately. And he doesn't live far from me here in town, but his studio's just across town. Him and I, we just bang things back and forth. We have a couple times or once, at least on a big record, brought his files over here. I have the same software as he does. He uses a Wavelab. And he just brings the file over. We open it here. I listen here and, you know, maybe tweak. But that's only happened one time. And that's a very, very, very specific time. So most of the time, I just love everything he does. And that time, I loved everything he did. But I was given sort of the final approval of the master. Like you're the one in charge of this. You final approve it. And I had a couple things that I just wanted to clean up really in my mix, but using a little bit of EQ and a little bit of de-essing and a couple things like that. So it was easier for me to have him come over here and hang out, and we had some drinks, you know. You know, we just made it an evening. So it was fun.
Does it happen very often that you are listening to record that you've already mixed, it's out, and you're listening at home and you think, oh my God, I wish I could go back. Yeah. Oh.
Every record, every single record. That's just how it is. And then about a year later, you listen to it again, you don't remember any of that shit. You're like, it sounds pretty great. So, you know, is what it is. Well, thanks for having me here at PSP Master Tales. If you need to get a hold of me for any reason, you can reach me at either my management website, which is globalpositioningservices.com, or you can email me at vance@vancepowell.com. Thanks for having me, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was an honor.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, it was a pleasure to do it. You guys keep up the good work there. I'm going to go eat.